Well, like I said, it's lovely to be here, and I do want to thank Albert and Stephen and Gregory for holding this Sangha every Sunday, and just for a marvelous website. And I don't know who does the GBS on Facebook, but there's constantly quotes that I find inspiring, and it's just a really lovely presence in my life, and so I'm grateful for all of that. And like I said earlier, there's a million places we could be, so I thank you for your practice, for choosing to be here today. So, desire, wow, it's a big one. I got half an hour, right? And it's curious that you chose desire during Gay Pride Month. It's a great subject, I feel, and certainly in the context of, you know, the safety we create here on a weekly basis, it's an opportunity to maybe dig a little deeper, you know? That there's a ample opportunity to skim the surface, I find. And so this is an opportunity maybe to reach a little bit more to our own advantage. And that said, I guess there are several guidelines or sort of things that I'd like to say before the talk, actually. And one of them is that, you know, the Pali Canon, the Buddha's words coming from 26 to 2700 years ago, were appropriate to that time. And he was actually speaking to a monastic community. He was speaking to nuns and monks that were following and in monasteries. Well, we're not monastics. We're lay people. And so there is something to keep in mind about that. Not only how the teachings have come all of these years and how they translate into our contemporary lives in modernity, but also, you know, what does it mean to hear words that were spoken to monks, and how do we integrate them into our lay lives? There is a distinction there. The other thing I think when we talk about desire is that, you know, I just read from Jan's book, and Jan she awakened. And she's, you know, she's living proof of the fact that it can happen, right? But it's not that easy to feel a lot of the time. It's hard to feel that you're actually going to get to this liberated state. I mean, I came out when I was, 17, you know, and I remember I was about 19, and I thought, you know, I want to be free this life. And I was just thinking about gay stuff at that time, right? You know, but here I am, 58, and still feeling like I want to make it happen this life. At the same time, you know, it's a breath away. It's simply one breath away. Anyone who's enlightened was not enlightened. They took a breath and they became enlightened, right? So it's possible for all of us. But the other thing too is that if you ask me where I was at, you know, when I was 19, and have I become liberated since I am now 58, I would say, well, of course I've become more liberated. I'm more liberated now than the last time I sat with you here. You know, it's every day has its own learning and its own growth. So it's also a process rather than this magic wand, you know, suddenly you're awakened. I think the truth is that that does occur, but also we can perceive it as a gradual process. We're more awakened today than we were last week, one would hope. Of course, this comes about, for me, it has come about more, you know, fervently, with two things. One is daily practice. Some days I miss, but I try to sit for a good half hour every day. And then I find that I'm always reminding myself of that state, of that comfortable, relaxed, sometimes challenging state, but I'm there. And then retreats, because I think when you're sitting for 7-8 hours a day and then another 3 hours of walking meditation or however you might do that, you really get a chance to look at who you are, what's coming up for you. And the retreats are a great part of that purification process. So, that said, you know, desire is a tough one for all of us. It's certainly been a tough one in my life, you know. I'm sure that I'm not alone. I guess in the context of desire then, when you talk about love or sex or relationship and all that stuff, we in this country, it is the gay community that has experienced, you know, the AIDS epidemic, that we can't separate that out, really. Although these days we're not thinking about it as we used to back in the day when, you know, we sat at the bedside of our friends and lovers that were dying, you know. Today it's a manageable chronic disease for most or whatever. It's not just a gay disease in other parts of the country, but it seems to be a gay disease here more than anything. It's hitting our community, although it's starting to hit communities of color as well in a big way. Not starting to, but it continues to hit communities of color in a big way. So at the same time that we're trying to talk about desire and what it means to be in relationship and love, etc., we cannot forget our history at one point absolutely equated love or sex with death. I mean, that's a part of where we're coming from, especially for those of us in the room that are closer to my age. You know, we've been there. We've had that real experience, and how many of us are living with HIV today and or still frightened about it, you know. I remember the days when, you know, I'd get on the scale, because weight's an issue for me in my life, and I'd get on the scale and I'd gain a few pounds, and then I was like, oh, at least I don't have AIDS, because, you know, if you were gaining weight, it was a good sign, right? I don't know if you've had that experience, but I was certainly there because we were terrified. And we're still experiencing that post-traumatic stress disorder. I believe it's a part of our community. We just don't talk about it as much. Okay, so it's no easy task, you know. And I don't know if I used this the last time I was here, but I love this lyric from a song by Bonnie Raitt. She says, "I'm taking my time, so please don't rush me. I'm trying to sort out some things I didn't know existed. I've been here before, and I know where the traps lie." Yeah. So, what is desire? If we go to the Pali Canon, there are three types that are in the Buddhist discourses. And the first is the craving for sensuality or sensual pleasures. And that's the Pali word for desire is tanha. So that would be kama tanha. And then there's the craving for becoming or for existence, which is referred to as bhava tanha. Now that would be, we know about sensual, you know, it's like sensual is the good-looking guy across the room, or it's the ice cream and cookies upstairs that we're about to enjoy, or whatever those desires we understand. The desire for existence is, for example, where I rub up against is being single these days. You know, I ended a relationship in last October, and so it's sort of like, what does it mean to be 58 and single? And that's tough, and loneliness arises, and it's a big one. So I'm always wishing for the existence of not being single, right? That said, the third type of craving is for not becoming, or non-existence, and or extermination. So I remember before October there were times when I wish I was single. You know, so I mean that's love, isn't it? It's sort of like there's this, you rub up against this, and that's vibhava tanha, right? You're here and you wish that something would be that is not existing, and then you get it, and then you wish it were different yet again, because it's always needing, there's never enough or whatever, because that's the way our minds work, or that's the way we're experiencing things. So there's the three times: wishing to have or to obtain, and wishing not to have and not to obtain, right? But again, always rubbing up against the reality of what the present moment holds. So, a Tibetan teacher, Lama Thupten Yeshe, it is precisely because our present life is so inseparably linked with desire that we must make use of desire's tremendous energy if we wish to transform our lives into something transcendental. So is there a place for desire in the Dharma? And the truth is that they're not separate. It's all one, right?